George woke up with big plans today. It was his second week in the neighborhood and he had prepared to go check the haunted house his neighbors talked about. It was a crappy story. They said the people who lived there mysteriously died in their sleep one night and nobody knew until a week later when their remains were found rotten. They had always been strange, you know. Matt, his neighbor, said after narrating the story. Surprising. More like creepy. Their bodies were found on the couch facing the TV. Almost like they died watching it, Matt said, with a half smile. That's kinda like the way I'd love to die. How? Alone and forgotten? No. Die watching TV, maybe even watching SpongeBob. That would be the classiest way to die. George shook his head and chuckled. At least, he had one friend in Arizona who had a dark sense of humor. So, are you going to come with me? George asked. Nope. Nothing new there to see. George shrugged. So that morning, George woke up, wore his favorite jean and set out. The lawn of the supposedly haunted house was surprisingly mowed. Hello. His voice echoed back at him in manifolds. He smiled to himself and continued snooping around. First, he went to the master bedroom that had massive wardrobes, then to the kids' rooms. One of them had a worn-out poster of Madonna nailed to the wall and a picture of the family smiling, then to the kitchen. The tables were neat, in fact, very neat. When he rubbed his thumb over the table, there was not a single speck of dust on it. Who could have been maintaining such a place for this long, he wondered. He took pictures of the kitchen and even slipped a fork into his pocket for keepsake. Confident and happy with his adventure, he decided to wander to the basement. It was the only dusty part of the house. Suddenly, he heard the front door open. A flurry of voices followed, voices of children and that of their parents cautioning them against running in the sitting room. Meredith, that's my doll. Give it back. One of the girls said Meredith. Now, he was alarmed. Meredith was the name of one of the girls that died in this house. No, Jenny. Come on. Yours is in the basement, remember? The other replied. George froze. Those were the girls that died years ago. And now, she wants to come to the basement? He heard the footsteps approach the basement. She climbed down the steps and, with a flashlight, she searched for her doll. George hid in the darkest corner of the basement. She dusted the brown, dirty doll when she found it and made to climb back up. He was going to heave a heavier sigh of relief when she turned swiftly and flashed the light in his direction. George could feel himself dying under the light. He waited for her to gasp and call for the other ghosts to come, but she didn't. She flashed the light at some other place and left. His heart slid down his throat. When he realized he couldn't be seen, he climbed up. The ghost family went about their business oblivious of his existence. George took pictures of them, pleased with his big find. Dad, come see this. The president is making an announcement, Meredith called out. Gimme a sec, dear. George turned to look at the TV, which wasn't there when he first walked in, and on the screen, the president there was Barack Obama. How could it be? Times have changed. The father sat on the couch and groaned. He dropped a newspaper that had been under his arms onto the table. The paper read the 20th of July, 2010, which was the year the entire family died. Honey. The wife called from the kitchen. Now, what is it again? He said, exhaustion evident in his voice. The wife came in with the youngest daughter rushing behind her like a mean cat. I can't find my fork. She yelled. Someone musta took it. George froze again. Yes, someone musta took it. I know this. Someone was there. I know it. I know it, she repeated, stomping her feet like she stood on a colony of soldier ants. Calm down, little bad bear. We'll find it. Let Daddy watch the news, her dad said, his eyes darting across the room. Come, Betty. I will get you another one. Tut tut. Say no more, the mom said, rubbing her short, curly hair. After the fork issue, the house was quiet. For inexplicable reason, George couldn't get himself to leave the room. He was transfixed. Okay, babies. Time for lunch, the mother announced, coming with a tray filled with small porcelain dishes. Steam danced out of the plates and filled the room. The aroma tickled George's nostrils. It was sharp and bitter. George's hand flew straight to his nose and he tried to stifle the cough that was ragging to burst from his throat. They sat at their dining and ate with grave silence. The clink of their plates were the only sounds. "Gee, I dunno. My room smells different, Danny," the boy said. I know, the father said, wiping the soup that slipped from his mouth. When they finished their dinner, they all sat at the long couch in the same way they had been pictured sitting when they died. They were still for minutes. Once in a while, they would sigh and exchange grave looks. "Danny, draw the drapes," the father instructed, huskily. The room became dim and only the light from the TV illuminated the room. They were watching the TV with great concentration. "It's that time of the year again," the father began. "It's that time of the year again," they chorused, solemnly. George narrowed his eyes at them. Suddenly, his phone alarm rang. He had set it for 5 p.m. Oh no, he muttered under his breath. The ghosts had heard his phone ring. They looked back sharply, but not directly because they couldn't see him. The father stood up and sniffed. He walked close to the area where George stood like a pole, holding his breath like a boy learning to swim. The man sniffed deeper and soon, he was face to face with George but he couldn't see. He poked his finger at George and it passed through his body like light. Seeing that man close up, George noticed how pale he looked, so pale he was almost translucent. His children and wife looked at him keenly. When he nodded his head, Danny reached for the TV remote and switched the station. A video of George started to play, a video of all he had done since he entered the house. It started with him stealing a fork from the kitchen, to which the aggrieved girl shouted, "I told you someone took it," and him in the basement. It was almost like someone followed him with a camera all through. The idea made his hair stand on his neck like the spikes on a porcupine. They hit the forward button until they got to the present. George was looking at himself on the TV standing right behind the family seated on the couch and they all turned backwards. This time, George could feel the directness of their gaze. They had seen him. They all stood up at once. George shrieked like a banshee and flew up the stairs into the master bedroom. He dived into the wardrobe and shut it close. He placed his hand over his pounding chest. An eye peeped at him through the wardrobe's keyhole. He screamed and, with the fork in his pocket, thrust at it. Immediately, the eye vanished. After staying there for minutes, crying and trying to steady himself, he opened the wardrobe. Lo, the previously neat house had devolved into an abandoned building. It looked as spooky as can be and worse, he realized he had been hiding in a box. When he looked at his hand, he wasn't holding a fork but a crow's foot. He dropped it as though it were red-hot iron and wiped his hand on his dirty trouser. The cobwebs clung stubbornly to his hair and cloth. He zoomed off. The sitting room where he had, only minutes ago, stood was in worse shape. The chandeliers dangled and looked like it would drop any minute. He pushed the door and bolted out of the lawn. The lawn was filled with dry leaves and there was a crunch in every step he took in his galloping run. By the time he reached down the street, he was huffing and puffing like a boxer after the 11th round. He showed down when he reached his house because his parents' cars weren't parked in the driveway and there was no way he was going to stay in the house alone. Just then, he felt a warm hand tap him. He nearly screamed again but he saw it was just Matt. "Hey! Look who we have here, Spider-Man." Matt laughed. "What's this you got all over your hair?" "Dude," George said, swallowing hard. "That house is haunted." "Come on, I was only joking." "It's not haunted, it's just an abandoned property," Matt replied, waving his hand as if he was dispelling a bad smell. "Maybe you were. But it's haunted. I am serious. I was there. People are there every weekend. Middle school kids go there to play hide and seek." George remembered he took photos of the house, so whipped out his phone and wiped the screen. "Look," he said, as he searched through his gallery. He clicked on one of the pictures and it opened with a message, "Unsupported file format." "Yes? What am I supposed to see?" Matt said, mockingly. "Ghosts, whatever. I didn't see anything. Are you even listening to yourself? You need sleep." George ate his dinner quietly and went to his room. He dismissed all the ideas of ghosts as just imaginations. He rolled onto his bed and, for the second time, checked his phone's gallery. This time, the pictures opened. But it wasn't a picture he took earlier. It was a picture of the ghost father watching him from his own window and grinning. A chill rushed through his body and a shadow loomed over him.